All right, welcome back, fellow nerds. It's time for another exciting episode of Nerdvine. Today, we're finally diving into the constantly promised second episode of Champagne. So let's talk about this fascinating, effervescent elixir, exploring how it's made, some exciting history. 15-year-old me would, die if she knew current me is excited about history, the sweetness levels that you may see, and the grapes that bring our champagne to life. If you have not guessed from that lengthy list of topics, today's video is a long one. So if I start talking fast, there should be a gear somewhere on YouTube you can slow down the speed. If your ADHD is kicking in, just skip around to the parts that interest you the most. And if you just cannot all in one go, just watch this video over a couple days. If you're in it for the long haul, settle in with some snacks, and then, just however you want to approach this one, we're going to be here a while learning a lot. So let's start with the magic behind the bubbles. Champagne is obviously unique because of its production method, known as the traditional method, méthode traditionnelle, méthode champenoise, método classico. I had the German one I have here because I don't speak German, so I'm going to play this for you.
Klassische Flaschengärung.
Yep, it means classic bottle fermentation, so I like that. And then the méthode cap classique. That's everything. That's easy, right? You can totally remember all of that. Yeah, me too. Don't sweat it, though. The ones you'll see most are traditional method, méthode traditionnelle, and méthode cap classique, with the latter being the South African wines from the Western Cape, so technically not champagnes anyway. I just wanted you to know all the names that this technique can be called, partly because it's interesting and, we're nerds. This method is used for champagnes, créments, which is a few videos from now, cava, and Franciacorta. No firm dates for those, the cava and the Franciacorta yet, but there's just, there's a lot of wine to cover. Other methods for making sparkles and bubbles include the transfer method, and I can't think of a single specific example for this, though I know theoretically I think it is used for champagne. I'll do some research. We'll come back to it. And then there's the tank or charmat method, which I believe I briefly mentioned in the Prosecco video because it is used for Prosecco, as well as Moscato d'Asti and Lambrusco. So we can talk more about that method when I do a video on one of those two wines. Those dates also to be announced. Right, but we're talking about champagne. So first you cultivate and harvest your grapes. Now in Champagne, this area of France right here, all the grapes are hand harvested. You will not see machine harvesting. Machine harvesting will inevitably break a grape skin or two, or many, and it's super important not to break the skins of these grapes until the exact right moment. Once you've harvested the grapes, the first step is to make the base wine, which is still meaning not bubbly. This is just basic winemaking, which in retrospect we actually still haven't covered. But basically you make a plain old wine that will undergo its first fermentation in an oak barrel or a stainless steel tank, like any other wine. Step 2, assemblage of the cuvée. Unlike a lot of still wines, which have a vintage every year, it's just that, some are better than others. There are not actually a ton of vintage champagnes, and those that there are cost many dollars. This is largely because not every year is good enough to make a vintage champagne. For example, our recent vintage years have been 2005, 2008, 2012, 2013. Wait, I'm pretty sure 2004 was also. 2004 was great. That doesn't mean nothing was made in 2006, 2007, 2000, all the other interim years. You get the picture. Those still wines will be blended at this step to create the perfect profile. Creating the perfect blend does not mean those wines we're assembling are great. I remember one of the super delightful master somms during my intro CMS course was saying the process of tasting these wines is not enjoyable. And I get that. Like, if these wines are designed to undergo a second fermentation and a few other steps that we're getting to, I'm trying to imagine anything that this would be akin to, and I'm falling short. Maybe I'll try to sneak my way into one of these tastings. But because I have a lot of pictures today, here is a picture of assembling the blend. So these are all the still wines. They're making mixes. Right, so step 3 is where we start to get a little crazy. So this blend that some genius gifted winemaker with a nose and palate I envy, this blend that we've just made will be put into the bottle with the liqueuer de tirage, which is a syrupy, sugary, yeasty mixture. Tirage means to draw, not sketching, like pulling. So tirer is to pull. I'm not sure what we're drawing out or pulling here. I'll try to find out. I'll get back to you. Anyway, you dump in the liqueur de tirage and you slap a crown cap on the bottle. Crown caps are like what you find on soda bottles or beer bottles or pet nats. And over time, the yeast eats or metabolizes the sugar and creates bubbles. Step 4. There are 7 steps, by the way, so if you need a restroom break or to make some food, just pause me. I'll wait. So step 4 is surely aging. I think we actually talked about this in the vocab video, so just a quick refresher. Yeast cells do in fact break down after feasting on all of their sugar. This process is called autolysis. I think that's how you pronounce it. And now the champagne hangs out with those spent cells for a minimum of 12 months, getting fun flavors like dough, brioche, baked bread, pastry crust, yeasty stuff. Step 5 will come up again in our history section, little foreshadowing. Riddling, or remuage, is step 1, so 5.1, in the sediment removal. Sounds grosser than it actually is, I promise. It's actually really cool. So the lees we discussed before need to be removed from the wine so we can drink nice, crisp, clear champagnes. So the bottle is just very gradually turned to move the lees to the neck. So you can do this by hand on these pupitres, which is super cool and traditional and historic. Or you can do it a little less romantically using a gyro palette, which is obviously significantly faster. Disgorging, or dégorgement, is the 6th step and step 2, I guess so 5 point, anyway, of the sediment removal. There are a couple different ways to eject the solidified yeast cells. Cold is used to solidify the cells, and then you can disgorge by hand, as seen here, or using a machine, as seen here. The final step, so step 7, you've just booped out these yeast cells and liquid, so there's space left over, and into this space goes the liqueur d'expédition, a mixture of wine and sugar. So how much sugar is in your liqueur d'expédition determines how sweet your bubbly beverage is. Brut nature is where we will start. It is also called non dosé and can only legally contain 0 to 3 grams of sugar per liter. So keeping in mind that your average bottle is 750 milliliters, you would have 2.25 grams of sugar max. And because I am either a masochist or a lunatic, I love Brut nature. Somehow I think the extreme lack of sugar juxtaposes the inevitable fruitiness just right, and I love lots of lees time and malolactic conversion. So think like rich, buttery, pear, apple pastries that are delicious, but not sweet. That's sort of your ideal Brut nature. Anyway. Next up is extra brut, which can have 0 to 6 grams of sugar per liter. So this means you can legally have an extra brut that's drier than a Brut nature. Why would you do this? No idea, actually. Unless maybe the winemaker doesn't want to intimidate people by being at the extreme end of the spectrum. Maybe I should actually ask this question in my next class. I'll get back to you if I find an answer. And then Brut comes in at 0 to 12 grams of sugar per liter, and this is also approximately where my personal love of champagne starts to wane, and many other people really begin to fall head over grapes. So you will see a lot of Bruts on the market. In fact, actually, Brut is the most popular sweetness level on the market, at least in the US. I'm not entirely certain outside of it, presumably because the acidity and the sweetness are in such nice, perfect balance. Does that mean that if we like the off-balance ones, we're off-balance? I don't know, honestly. Could be. Whatever. So extra dry is my favorite category, not to drink, but to talk about, because extra dry marks the start of the off-dry champagnes. Having the aforementioned 3 are all considered dry. Confusing. Extra dry can have 12 to 17 grams of sugar per liter. So at a minimum, we are looking at 9 grams in a bottle with a maximum of 12.75. For reference, that's approximately 2 or 3 sugar cubes. Sec, which by the by means dry in French, is considered semi-sweet with 17 to 32 grams of sugar per liter, and demi-sec, which means half dry but is considered sweet, can have 32 to 50 grams of sugar per liter. For reference, a 12-ounce Coca-Cola has approximately 39 grams of sugar, and a 12-ounce Pepsi has 41 grams of sugar. Again, I'm citing U.S. Sodas. And also, for further reference, the Gewürztraminer I had for that video was a demi-sec. Finally, we have doux, which is very sweet, and conveniently, finally, doux means sweet. Any champagne with 50 plus grams of sugar per liter is doux. Because all of the wines are labeled as some form of dry, because brut means raw, dry means dry, and sec means dry, it can get a little frustrating, I will give you that. So just remember, brut is brutally dry, and sec starts with S, like sweet, or just drink a lot of champagne and figure out which one you like and stick with it. Like 98% of the time, because 2% of the time I encourage you to try something new. Okay, deep breaths. I need to take one myself. Let's talk a little history. We're not going to get super in depth because while I did warn this video was long, the history of champagne could honestly be a 2 or 10 part video all by itself because there's a lot. So let's just cover some important basics and some points that yours truly finds extra fascinating. So first and foremost, champagne was an accident. We've already seen where champagne is, and fun fact, it gets cold there. And in the late 1600s, we weren't too concerned with keeping the wine warm, we were concerned with keeping ourselves warm so we didn't freeze to death. But another fun fact is that in order for yeast to eat sugar, it needs to be warm enough. Otherwise it gets kind of sleepy mid-feast and is like, night-night, fermentation over. But wait, then in the spring it gets warm and the yeast is like, oh man, look at my feast still waiting for me. Second fermentation. Super cool, right? Yes, if you have corks and cages. Less cool if you're stashing your wine in clay jugs with a rag like stuck in the top or whatever, because remember, it's like the 1600s. Also, it's the 1600s, and so you're super pious. Bottles in your basement are exploding. It's obviously the devil. Le Vin du Diable, they named it. So our friend D. Perry, okay, just kidding, Dom Perignon is a monk at the time, and the story goes that he tried a lot of ways to get rid of the bubbles, and presumably to banish the devil, considering he was a monk. And then he finally drank it and said, I'm drinking the stars. He probably didn't say that, considering it didn't appear in, I think it was like a print marketing tactic in the 1900s, but it is a lovely story. The monk Perignon is also credited a lot with improving and understanding the blending of grapes. I believe he's credited with the aggressive pruning to yield better grapes, and also understanding when to bottle the wine to start the fermentation and second fermentation processes. Leave it to a woman to really make things better, though. I'm kidding. Am I kidding? Anyway, Madame Clicquot was the one who brought us the remuage, which you may recall is step 5 of the process. So before her, getting the sediment out of the bottle was both puzzling and kind of messy. So she is credited with inventing the pupitre that you saw, and also for insisting on taller and more elegant bottles. She is, of course, also the name behind the Veuve Clicquot label, Veuve being French for widow. Another veuve to whom we owe much is Madame Pommery. She also took over after the death of her husband and is credited with pushing extreme quality in the champagne world. So before her, to be honest, almost all champagne was sweet because, frankly, it wasn't very good. So the only way to make it drinkable was to add sugar. But Madame Pommery was so demanding with regard to quality that in 1874, Pommery Nature made a successful name for itself and is largely considered to be the first brut champagne, at least the first successful one. So cheers to women. You can still find Dom Perignon, Veuve Clicquot, and Pommery champagnes in stores today, but I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Ruinart, the oldest champagne house in France. You may recall that in the Champagne video 1, I think we were drinking a Chanoine Frère, the second oldest champagne house, but title of oldest goes to Ruinart, founded on September 1st of 1729. Which like blows my mind. So I don't know when people will watch this video, but at the time of this filming, that's 294 years. So just, wow. I will include a brief history of the house along with a million other links in case you're interested. In the video description, you can learn more and we can sort of wrap this up and get to the drinking parts. I promise we are basically coming to the end. So our last topic, the allowable grapes in Champagne, are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier, which is sometimes also called Pinot Meunier, the latter 2 being red grapes. And you may wonder at champagne's color, because it's like a white wine with red grapes, but that's an easy trick. They just remove the skins from the juice ASAP to avoid prolonged skin contact. If you find that you enjoy classic champagnes but want to try something different, look for Blanc de Blanc, which is 100% Chardonnay, or Blanc de Noir, which is made only from the 2 red grapes. And of course, there are also rosé champagnes. They just don't get a special fancy schmancy name like the Blanc de Blanc or the Blanc de Noir. Being not a huge Chardonnay fan, I love a good Blanc de Blanc, which is fun and confusing. I don't think I've had a Blanc de Noir, so I guess I'll have to try one, obviously. Due to the grapes used in, sorry, I just blanked. The grapes that are used in these variations on the style, you can expect a little more crispy citrusy in the Blanc de Blanc and a touch more fruit-forward profile in the Blanc de Noir. But honestly, to heck with that. Just try them all, take notes, decide what you like. Okay, my friends, that is a wrap. Give yourself a pat on the back if you can't reach your back, or if you don't have the correct, if you don't have the limbs or anything to pat on the back, give yourself a mental hug. That was a ton of information, and you got through it. So from the method to the sweetness and the history to the varietals, you have uncorked, get it? Get it? No? Okay. An absolute wine barrel of knowledge. I hope this helps you both appreciate champagne and also pick some bubbles you'll love. Now, finally, we will talk about what I'm going to be drinking, and if you're feeling overwhelmed, this is pretty much it. This is the end of the educational part of the video. You can tap out. Don't sweat it. I don't blame you. I will see you for the next episode. Cheers to you. Okay, so, oh, hi, miss. Recently, I drank the Georges Vessel non-vintage brut from Bouzy, an area in the Montagne de Reims. It was pretty good, but I bought it because I was looking for the Belle Epoque, and the store didn't have it, and the store guy recommended this. This is not a replacement for the Belle Epoque, and if you are expecting that, you will be wildly disappointed. But it was a nice, solid champagne with a really cool cage. And then I was also trying to read about Vessel himself, because one of my searches on the winery seemed to note that he made some incredible contributions to the champagne world. Anyway, then I got paywall blocked, and I just didn't feel like giving it that much effort, because what I'm drinking today is the kind of winery I really, really like to promote. So the Drapier Carte d'Or, and this is a family-owned and run estate winery established in 1808 and is currently in its 8th generation. So some takeaways that really got me going on this one were the small production, certified organic and carbon neutral, farming conducted on horseback, both for protection from erosion and for a limited carbon footprint. Just everything that like really speaks to me. So it may come as no surprise. I got this from Vinoculture, and since I don't know when I'll be back in Virginia, I plan to very slowly savor every sip. So let's do that now. I'm pouring this very aggressively. This is a lot of bubbles. Got the bubbles in my nose, as I am wont to do. Oh, that smells incredible. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, I didn't get a lot of lees on the nose, I'll be honest, but I do get a little bit of a buttery brioche, which I would guess comes from the lees, and potentially some malolactic. I'm spoiled because I live in New England and we got to go apple picking. This is very much the yellow apples that are way more flavorful than your Golden Delicious apples. Is that what they're called? I don't know. The really flavorful yellow apples. Nice and crisp, juicy, appley flavor with maybe some floral quality to it. I'm definitely getting like a rich floral. This is very refined. I like this a lot. Yeah, so it's how much? Okay. I mean, it's a true champagne from Champagne. So it was $65. So if you're feeling like splurging a little, I would say this is a great non-vintage brut choice, despite that I still need to try a brut nature. Yeah. Go and get yourself some drapier. And, again, you learned a lot today. Anything you remember is great fun. But if you remember nothing else, just drink what you love and don't save your special champagnes for anything special. Being alive is special. So go drink something good and treat yourself. Cheers.